Okay. Ois ches. Ois ches. Ubiur ha'inyan beprotius yoser. The Rebbe is going to explain the idea over here more specifically in more detail. Yuvan uh, bahagdim mashe bekorbonis namar reach nichoyach. By the korbonis, it says it is a pleasant aroma. By the only mitzvah in which it says, uh, the only mitzvah which it says that when you do the mitzvah, it's a reach nechoyach, is when it comes to a korban. So, upirshu Chazal, what does it mean, the reach nechoyach? Chazal explained, nachas ruach lefonai shomarti v'naser itzoni, that this is a pleasantness before me that I have said and my will has been done. That is by a korban. You do a korban. The Eibishter says, I get nachas ruach, I have a pleasantness because what I have said has been done. But why only by a korban? The Rebbe was discussing over here that the whole idea is Yerida Tzorech Aliyah, that we get the real bittul b'metzias. So this is why the Rebbe is explaining from the idea of the korban. Why is it only tzorich lahavin? That we need to understand. Harizeh she'omarti v'naser itzoini hu b'chol hamitzvos. All mitzvahs, when the Eibishter says for us to do it, and people do it, the Yidden do it, so it's naser itzoini by all mitzvahs. But yet we say this by korbanos davke. The Rebbe will explain that davke by a korban we have the ultimate level of aliyah. We're talking about here the ultimate level of bittul b'metzias is davke by a korban, and because it's davke by a korban, that's why it's only by a korban that it says Reich Nechayach. Abayir Ad Murazokin, the Alter Rebbe explains, Behagdim Masha Amr Razal, by first bringing down what our sages of blessed memory said, Ad Shaloi Nivra Ha'olam Ha'yahu Ushmoi Bilvad, that before the world was created, what was in this, what was here before the world? It was Hashem and His name. It was who? Ushmoi Bilvad. Just Hashem and His name. What does it mean, Shemoi? What was the Shemoi? The Shemoi hu bechinas Malchus. That is the level of Malchus. The name of Hashem is Malchus. Malchus is like Hashem, and Malchus is the source of creation. There was no creation, but it was only Hashem and the source of creation, which is Malchus. Shehu Mokor HaHashpoah B'chayis HaNivroim. Malchus is the source for the flow and the vitality of the created being. Ushmoi Shahoya Koidam Shenivra Ha'olam Hu. What is the name that was before the world was created? Hu Bechinas Hamalchus. K'moi Shahoya Soklula Be'ein Sof Baruch. That was the level of Malchus, as Malchus is included in Ein Sof. There was no world. It was only Ein Sof. It was Ein Sof with Malchus, and the Malchus was included in the Ein Sof. The Behiyois Shom Eino Bibchinas Mitzias. When Malchus is in Ein Sof, it's not an entity. K'moi oir hakolul b'moir she'enei b'metzias, just like light, which is included in the luminary, which means you have a luminary, you have the sun. The shine of the sun before it comes out, the way it's in the moir, is not in existence. It doesn't exist there as an oir because it's all moir. In the moir, the oir is not an entity. Malchus in Ein Sof is not an entity. ואחר כך נעשה הספשטוס האור והזיו להכניס הנברואים עין ליש, and then it became an expansion. The oil spread out, and the ray that was included in the Ein Sof lahachayos hanivroim me'ayin liyesh, to vitalize the created being from nothingness into existence. That means hoyahu ushmoi bilvad, before the world was created. There was the shame, and then later the shame as it was kolul in the moir, which was a non-entity, and then there was nispashet to create the world or the creation by the Yeshua. So the Alter Rebbe explains, the fact that the light descended from its level, as it was included in the Ein Sof, to vitalize the created being from nothingness into being. So it came down. First it was kolul, the oil in the Ein Sof, and then it came down. Malchus came down to vitalize the Nivroim. The purpose is for an elevation, so that later on, when they're a yesh, they're gonna be turned ayin. Hainu shahayesh yiyeh batul v'nichlal be'oir ein sof baruch hu mamash, so that the yesh that was created should be subjugated and entirely, completely included in the Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamash. So we came out and created a yesh so that this yesh can later on be bottled and included in Ein Sof. And based on this idea, he explains, so the Alter Rebbe explains that's why by specifically by korbanos it says reach nechoyach. So he says nechoyach miloshin nachas ruach. Nechoyach means a pleasantness, meaning is that it's a nachas ruach for Hashem from the korbanos. Why is it? Ki iker hanachas ruach v'hatainug de lamailo, because the main pleasantness of spirit and the delight, the enjoyment of above, humizeh shayesh mizbatel v'nase b'chinas ayin, is the fact that the yesh is nullified and he turns to the level of ayin. V'ikar habitl yesh li'ayin hu b'maisa hakorbanos. The main place where there is that bittel from a yesh to an ayin. B'chlal, we're saying that's the avodah, the yerida tzarech aliyah, to have the yesh become an ayin. Where is the main avodah and where the yesh becomes ayin? Ubemaisa korbanos. That's why it's reich nechoyach, because that's the pleasantness, because by korbanos. The inyan hakorbanos hu ha'alo milmato l'maylo, because the idea of korbanos is there is an elevation from below to above. Shahatachten yoitze umizbatel mimitziuse. That the lower one goes out and is negated from his entity. He loses, the Avodas Kavanah is to loses the entity, but oilel, it goes up, meaning nichlal, it's included l'mayla above kedil kamon. The Rebbe brings down over here the word, the explanation of the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe is trying to explain. We're talking about the Maila of Bittel, the true Bittel Amiti. So he introduces what the Alter Rebbe says about Korbanos. That only by Korbanos does the Pasuk say that it's a Reach Nichoyach, that the Eibishter has pleasure from that. Why is it only by Korbanos? So he says that the main pleasantness above, the main Nachas Ruach, is when the Yesh is Botel Ayin. And that idea is felt by Korbanos more than anything else, because the Korban goes up, is this battle, and it's Oila Lemailo, it goes above, as the Rebbe will explain. Now the Rebbe says that the korban that the person brought, in addition to the elevation of the korban, also the malachim had an elevation. They, through the korban, they were also in this battle from their Messias, and they were elevated as well. Ulahoisiv, to add, the noisef leha da korban atzmai. In addition to the elevation of the korban itself, which is the idea of the nachas ruach from the korban itself, that the korban is elevated, shahabehem o shehi krivu al gabe hamizbeach hoison nisrefes mizbatelas mimitziuso, was burned and totally negated from its mitzvahs, and it's included in the fire of above. Nasa al yidei halo gam b'malochim ha'elyonim. This brings about an elevation also in the upper malachim. At the same time that the korban goes up, also the malachim go up. Because the pasuk, as the pasuk says, as korboni lachmi liishai. So pashut means my korban is a bread for the fires, but over here he says the ishai are actually the srofim, the malachim. The korban becomes a bread for the isha, for the malachim. Asher heim Asrafim, they are called those who burn. And the korban is lachmi, the korban who halechem, that's the bread, the hamozim, and the food shalohem, that is their bread and that is their food. Shemoisiv bohem koyach v'chayis, that when you bring a korban, when a person brings a korban, it brings it on the mizbeach, this adds in the serafim energy, power, and energy lihi botel v'lihi kolel ba'ir sof. So they should be negated and included in the sof. Ve'ad li'ishta'ova begufat malka, to the extent that they will be totally sucked up in the body of the king, that these seraphim will totally be included in godliness. So that's an additional bittul, not only the korban itself, but also the malachim who get the korban, that's the lachem. V'zehu inyan hashir shahaya b'shas hakrovas hakorbanis. This is the song that took place when you brought the korbanos, that was the aliyah. Ki kol aliyah hi alidei shir. For every elevation comes through a song. So we're talking about that the malachim are being elevated. So there has to be a song over there. K'may Razal, as our sages say it, a blessed memory, they teach the Mishnah of Shabbos. Over there it talks about carrying the animal, what things they can carry at Shabbos. It's not a malacha. So the Mishnah says that kol balei hashir, those who own the shir, yoitzin b'shir, they can go out with that shir. That's the garment of the animal, benim shochim b'shir. But here we're saying those who sing, they go out from their existence. They go out from their mitzias, b'shir with song. When they sing, they lose their mitzias. And also nimshachim, they're being brought down through the shir. Umuva b'lukut Torah, so he brings the taich in lukut Torah. The same sefer lukut amarim shel harav magid, in the lname of the sefer lukut of harav magid, the balei hashir heim hamalachim, that the balei hashir, those who are masters of the shir, those the malachim, and they are the ones that get the elevation, as he's going to explain. But he says, balei hashir, we call them malachim, but really, pashit, it means the owners of the animals that have these things on them. So that's also the same connect. We can tie the Bali Hashir that we're talking about, Malachim, imapirush bepashtus, with the simple explanation of Bali Hashir. Shabali Hashir hem chayis shenoisnim shir b'tzavora. Those are the owners of those shir. That's a garment, it's a jewelry that they put shir on their neck that they're allowed to wear on Shabbos. It's not called carrying. Kigam hamalachim nikrum shem chayis behemis, because malachim are also called oifanim v'chayis hakodesh. We call them behemis. So therefore, the bali hashir here doesn't mean animals, but it means malachim. Upirush yoitzim b'shir. What does it mean? They go out with the shir. Who? Shal yidei hashir sho'emrim hamalachim. That through the song the malachim say, yoitzim hakelim shalahem liskalo be'nisah baruch hu, they come out from their kelim to be included in the level, in the Eirei Baruch Hu. So basically, he says here that the korban, not only is it a halal, the korban bepashtus, but also the malachim, because the malachim, their elevation is also beloved b'shir, and that's how they leave. That's how the aliyah of the korban and the shir of the Leviim that they sing when you bring the korban, that represents that level of aliyah of the malach. Tess. The Rebbe said that's why it's called a korban. A korban means coming close to the Eibishter, being included to the Eibishter. Lahoisiv Tess, lahoisiv. This that we're saying that korbanos is the idea of elevation. Move on, gam shenikroim b'shem korban. We also understanding that they're called a korban. The called a korban. The name korban means close, included by Hashem. Especially the Rebbe says a name. A name is very important to tell us about what we're talking about. Especially according to the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Al haposik lo'olam havayed varcho nishto b'shamayim, that forever your word is always standing in the heavens. The shmoi shekol davar asher yikru loy b'loshen hakodesh moire, that when you have a name of every item, what we call it in Loshen Kodesh, that points loy rak al inyone. It's not just telling you what it is, alagam alachayis alekisha boy. It also tells you about the godly chayis, which is in that item, which is called by the name. So what is it called korban? The korban hu meloshin kiruv. Korban comes from the language of close. Shemiskarev lilakus, that he becomes close to godliness. V'zeh moire al inyan ha'alo, the behamshocha agayin halo. This points to the level, to the idea of elevation. Korban means elevating, becoming close to Hashem. The behamshocha milmaylo lemato. When it's not halo, but when it's milmaylo lemato, hachibur sheloim alakus. So what's the connection of the person with godliness? Who al yidei shalakus nimshach miskare love. That is through godliness extending and becoming close to him. But the korban is meloshin kiruv. Korban comes from the language of closeness. Shuhu miskarev lelakus. What does it mean that he comes close to the kus? That means shu yotzim mimikoymai mitziusay benichlal belakus. That you go out of your place, your mitzias, and you're included in the lakus. That's korban. The name korban carries the idea that the korban is not that you're bringing godliness to you, so you remain a metzias and you get to receive godliness. But fakert, you lose your metzias, you go out and you become close korban to Hashem, included batal b'metzias. V'yesh lekasher zei masha kosu b'lekutei Torah. We can tie this to what it says in Lekutei Torah. The lehakriv hu oisios leharkiv. The word lehakriv, to bring an offering, has the same level as the word leharkiv, to rot. The rekovin hu bitl betachlis. You rot when you sow something in the ground and the seed and it rots. That means hu bitl betachlis is the ultimate total negation. It loses its mitzias when it rots. So korban is the same letters of that level of bittul, like level of rekovin, like rotting. So we can say the explanation is that that's a halo to the Ein Sof, which is higher than connection to the world, in a very high place, a level of the infinite light, which is not connected, above connection to the world. The Yisayim is even more than just higher than the world. Shaloh, the Karbonis, Hilamayla the Inketz. The elevation of Karbonis is above to no end. As it says in the Pri Etz Chaim, the Isab is Zohar, that it's, we find in the Zohar, Ad heichin solek reusa de korban chulu, up till where does the rotzin of the korbanos, where does it go up to? How high? Le'elo ad insof, to up to insof. So you see in the Eitz Chaim that it's not just going up to insof, higher in the world, but up higher and higher. And that's why habitl the korbanos ubitl the rekoven. That's why it's a bitl of rekoven. It's a bitl of rat, which is the bitl betachlis. So it brings down from the Lekutei Torah, also connected the idea of korbanos and the idea of bitl, but not stam bitl, but a bitl in the level of rekoven. Lahakriv is the same letters as laharkiv, to rot, because it's a total bitl, as it brings down, goes to the highest of levels, and that's why it's called a bitl of rekovin, a bitl betachlis. Okay, we'll leave it over here. We'll mamshich and Mitzvah Shem tomorrow.